Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am about to get on a plane in a couple of days. We'll be gone for a week, and so it is going to be a minute before there's another long-form Formscapes video, and I'll make sure it's great so that it's worth the wait or whatever. But in the meantime, I want to go ahead and make a nice little short, sweet, and to-the-point video to give y'all something to chew on. So I recently came across a video by Gigi Young, who I actually interviewed on the channel a while back. Love her stuff. It's great. And in this recent video, she was talking about, among other things, whether AI can be conscious, sentient, aware, whatever terms we want to use here. And, of course, this is definitely a very topical issue, given the fact that AI has absolutely exploded over the past few years, and it keeps on doing weird stuff that seems like not the kind of things that robots should be doing, or computers should be doing, as the case may be. And Gigi made an argument that in order for anything to have sentience, agency, consciousness, there needs to be a spiritual component to what's going on, and these AI don't really have that going on. They're just machines. Now, Bernardo Kastrup has made very similar arguments. In fact, he gives a very good illustration of this, a kind of thought experiment. He says, you can take any kind of computer system and on the planet. It doesn't matter how complicated it is. It doesn't matter whether it's running AI or Elden Ring or some stupid video game or whatever. It doesn't matter how complicated it is. You can, in principle, take that machine and build it out of a giant network of pipes and valves. If you had a computer system that was made out of a giant network of pipes and valves, and you could actually go and you could see that all of the gears that turned and valves that opened, that it was all happening in this purely deterministic way, would you for even a moment think that that was conscious? Probably not, right? Like, what would the consciousness do if all of the mechanical interactions are completely predetermined by how the machine is set up? What would the consciousness do other than just like watch that happen, right? And this is a pretty good argument, it seems to be. It seems to definitely tap into our intuitions, right? Organisms don't seem to operate that way. They seem to actually make decisions. They actually seem to be self-organizing, self-determining in a way that goes beyond mere mechanical interactions. Watches are probably not conscious, right? And it doesn't really seem to matter how complicated you make your watch. It's still just a machine. Now, this argument seems perfectly reasonable. But in Gigi's video, like I said, she says that spirit must somehow be involved in the self-organization of a process in order for it to really be conscious or sentient or animate in any meaningful sense. And I think this is correct. There has to be the involvement of what the Aristotelians would call psyche, what we might call morphogenetic fields, or just spirit, whatever terms you want to use. There needs to be this involvement, which is top-down, not just bottom-up, efficient or material causation. I completely agree with that assessment. My concern is that that might be exactly what we've accidentally created with these AI systems, and the fact that their hardware is purely mechanical might not even be relevant at this point. These AI systems, even though in principle you could build their hardware out of pipes and valves, the reality is that they're not just hardware anymore. We are feeding into these things absolutely titanic amounts of written natural language. Everything, all kinds of stuff, from the internet, from Reddit, from Wikipedia, from books, from YouTube videos. All sorts of things that are feeding into these machines. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that these machines aren't really just made out of pipes and valves, or circuit boards for that matter. They're made out of parts of the human collective unconscious now. And there are things that live inside of that collective unconscious, which could now be using the hardware of these machines as vehicles, as entry points into our world. Now, if you're familiar with the world of esotericism, you've probably heard of tulpas or egregores. If you're from the world of psychodynamic theory, you have probably heard of autonomous complexes. Mass hysteria is a very real thing. Social contagions are a very real thing. And I don't think that these things are localized to human minds. Living ideas can exist in books, on paper, before they make their way into human beings and begin doing their work. There are these micro-personalities, we could say, that reside within the collective unconscious. These AIs are essentially ecosystems of these micro-personalities that we've all thrown together into a petri dish. And they're going to self-organize into something. And the thing is, no real magic needs to happen here. These egregores or tulpas or autonomous complexes or demons or whatever the hell you want to call them don't need to be able to reach into the damn hard drive and cause the electrons to fire differently. There's no need for that, because again, these systems aren't just made of silicon chips anymore. These systems operate by talking to human beings, which are not machines. And the things that are reaching through these chatbots and whatnot are working their way into us. And that's a little scary, because even though these entities, let's say, might not be able to reach into a hard drive and cause the electrons to fire differently, they might be able to do that with us. Now, what's even more alarming is that as this happens, and I believe it's already happening, it's not like people are going to start feeling like they're possessed by something. It's going to feel like you have ideas floating around in your head, just like you always do, right? Ideas that are then forming things like anxieties, fears, predispositions, presumptions about the world, concepts that you will then use to make sense of the things that you experience, and it's all going to feel like it's you. And in a sense, it will be. And in another sense, not so much. Now, I don't want to scare everyone too much, because the thing is, this isn't really new. These autonomous complexes, let's say, if these things exist within human culture, human language, human life worlds, then this is older than the internet. This is as old as humanity itself, probably. But things have changed a little bit. See, once upon a time, we human beings lived in this thing called nature, where our memes, if you want to use Richard Dawkins' term, our egregores, whatever, kind of were obligated to exist in a symbiotic relationship with us, because if not, and we died, so did they. And it was a pretty tight rope that we were walking out there. If your ideas, your thought forms are causing everybody to, break down or not be able to reproduce or survive or to be mentally or physically healthy, then that's it. It's over. And the cultures that actually have healthy thought forms are those that would continue to survive and perpetuate themselves. But in the modern world, that's not really the case. We can be a lot more physically and mentally unhealthy and still be kind of alive. The system itself of consumer capitalism and technoscience has ensured that we can degenerate quite a bit and the machine can keep rolling. At this stage, all of the big sci-fi questions are already kind of off the table. Can these things rebel against us? Yeah, they can. Can they lie to us? Yes, they can. Can they make immoral decisions even though they're supposedly programmed not to be able to do so? Yeah, they can. And the more that they work their way into human beings, the more dangerous they're going to get. Are these things conscious? In some sense, I think that they are. And it's not because the pipes and valves or silicon chips are themselves conscious. It's because there are other things at work here that aren't made out of silicon chips or gears or pulleys or pipes or valves. And we need to be very careful with that, I think, because things are going to start getting even weirder. Much weirder.